Brian from the channel Brian here. The first Sonic the Hedgehog movie came out in February 2020 and was one of the last movies before lockdown started. It seems so long since then, and in spite of all the ways the world has changed, this is a film recent enough for me to have reviewed. A measurable slump happened during COVID, which is understandable, but because it put restrictions on the kind of content that could get made and released, the median quality went down by a lot. But as Sonic 2 comes out, things are looking up. Ignore Minions 2 for a second. I'll watch the trailers before movies now, and I'm actually excited for what I'm seeing sometimes, even for franchise films. I don't know if COVID is going down or we're gonna hit a new wave like tomorrow, but just like Sonic 1 came out as normalcy was obliterated, Sonic 2 comes out on the cusp of a possible return to normalcy, at least among major film releases. And I take a strange amount of comfort even in this silly video game family movie because of that, even if it kinda sucks. That first Sonic movie was well received by audiences, and the only reason for this really is because Paramount fixed the original design of Sonic, you know, the one that was much, much worse. The rest of the movie absolutely did not matter. The audience that liked it got off on the idea of a studio listening to fans. I'm still not convinced Paramount didn't engineer this scenario by intentionally making the first design bad, but it's not a conspiracy I'm willing to argue over. Besides a faithfully energetic performance by Ben Schwartz, that first movie was a featureless gray brick of a lazily adapted intellectual property due to a total mismanagement and priority. James Marsden and the rest of the generic-ass family movie plot attached at his hip weighs everything down so much. I've never heard a good defense for this, or for any of the other movies that do this, because in 50 years, are we really gonna remember this Sonic the Hedgehog film characterized mostly by plot beats and characters which are totally inconsistent with Sonic's identity as something video game movies should strive for? Some scenes in Sonic 2 are nearly clones of ones from the first film, except instead of Marsden, Tails is with Sonic. An improvement, yes, but when the same caliber of bad family movie tropes is still there, and it's just the character is changed, the improvement's only marginal. I've heard Sonic fans bring up the existence of human characters in the video games, but on top of those human characters not at all being in the type of locations and scenarios this film puts its human characters in, why are these the games you want the movie to remind you of? I knew Sonic 2 would not fix this problem, no matter how much the trailer showcased Knuckles and Tails. Much to my pleasant surprise, the film eases up its restrictions on what it chooses to include from the games, with some actual screen time to match. Tails and Knuckles are just as faithfully portrayed as Sonic himself, and in a Chris Pratt is Mario world,
the fuck?
I'm thankful they got Colleen O'Shaughnessy to voice Tails instead of like, I don't know, Andy Samberg. The action scenes and set pieces resemble the games. Eggman actually looks like Eggman. You have the Master Emerald, and there's even a Mean Bean Machine reference for the cultured Sonic gamer. And when the three of them, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, are on screen together, having banter, sharing an action scene, it just gels. It feels so right. However, because of their presence in the last film, they're not just going to get rid of James Marsden and Tika Sumpter, but with how obligational their presence feels, it couldn't be more obvious they'd like to. The trade-off seems to be taking all of the boredom and agony that came with those characters' longevity in the plot of the first film, and condensing all of that into fewer scenes. Because holy shit, whenever these characters are on screen, it is genuinely awful. Not passable, not mediocre, genuinely terrible, awful, boring, bad movie. Their whole little subplot has to do with Sumter's sister's wedding, and it culminates in this action scene where the bride is like running down people with a golf cart. And I guess every joke is meant to be funny because it's an overweight black lady doing it. Are we still doing that? Are we still doing that trope? Maybe it's the presence of Tika Sumpter, but I half expected Medea to show up in these scenes. The film is not action-heavy, but for a family movie where all it had to do was make me say, oh, that looks like Ice Cap Zone, or that looks like Labyrinth Zone, it's entertaining enough. On the topic of Labyrinth Zone, there are 2 scenes setting up Sonic's inability to swim, and then is a payoff of him about to drown. And they don't play the drowning theme, they do the bubble thing, but not the drowning theme, why not? But by far the strangest music and sound design choice, hands down, comes in this fight between Sonic and Knuckles where they play original music from Ant-Man and the Wasp. Why go to the lengths of having to license a song that Disney probably owns, and from such a specific origin? This feeling of randomness and inconsistency is strewn across any portion of Sonic 2 which deviates at all from closely adapting the games. Sonic and Tails will have great chemistry together, but the actual scenes of them on their journey will feature them tag teaming in a dance-off set to Uptown Funk. Or a joke about Tails mistranslating Russian, so he's actually insulting the waitress. You know, that bit? Little conveniences and telegraphed setups for plot points will break up an otherwise straightforward little adventure. And even the film's best aspects aren't immune to this. There is no part of this movie, even if that character or that scene is not annoying most of the time, that doesn't succumb to some kinda dumbed down cliche. Knuckles is given his warrior mentality persona from the earlier chapters of Sonic lore, so he's sometimes characterized as a fish out of water, and then at one point says, "I am having the fun playing baseball," like he's Starfire. Gun is introduced, foreshadowing future arcs for the 3rd movie, but they call back to the Olive Garden joke from the 1st movie. But this is what people are defending. They're like, yes, I think that the Sonic adaptation, where there's a running gag about Olive Garden, is what video game movies should be, and this is indicative that a studio was listening to fans, putting a running gag about Olive Garden. And don't worry, there's a scene where Eggman flosses. Again. Or what about the film sometimes just forgetting Sonic is fast? Like, there's so many situations where they're acting like he couldn't just zoom over and grab something they need, or, like, get out of where they are when he really totally could have. Okay. As a silver lining, I guess unlike the first one, I think you could edit out most of James Marsden's stuff with 0 consequence. And that's something people like to say, hyperbolizing the inconsequential nature of something in a movie, but in this case, you literally could do that. Might help with the lengthy runtime too. A good 5 or 6 scenes could be just removed, and you'd have a fun video game movie that's almost worth sitting through the low points of. This is a bad family movie. Even at its best, Sonic 2 isn't like the Lego movie. It's never remotely sophisticated in its execution. But the climax rips. This is where the film comes into its own. And this is better than, say, Godzilla vs. Kong, where the entire rest of the movie is an infuriating mess, instead of just kinda bad until the climactic fight. Spoilers. So Eggman absorbs the Master Emerald, becomes Josh Trank's Dr. Doom, and turns into a tornado, which is already kind of funny. But then he takes all the parts from the town's machinery and forms it into a giant Eggman robot that Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles have to fight. And after so many video game adaptations that are like totally missing the point and not using any iconography from the video games in a meaningful way, it was so jarring to see exactly how a Sonic movie should end on the big screen. The last movie had Eggman chasing Sonic for 5 minutes. This is so much better. There's much more variety and characters playing active roles in what's happening. And then, kept out of all the trailers and promotional art, Sonic absorbs the Chaos Emeralds and turns into Super Sonic. And even though I'm a grown-ass man who just sat through 100 minutes of a not-so-great movie, seeing this on the big screen made even me go like, oh. I realize this review is kinda negative, and there's certainly far too much wrong with Sonic 2 to ever consider it good. But all that should be contextualized with how especially a shame those failures are, given how much it gets very right. There are teases of what could be a fun, simple Sonic movie, to the point where I might not be completely opposed to, like, showing this to a friend who wanted to see it. They are clearly making a third film, so let's just hope the first scene of that movie is Eggman knocking a satellite out of the sky and it landing on Marsden and Sumter, so we don't have to deal with this shit anymore. 5 out of 10. So hey, did you enjoy this movie more than me, or less than me? Please tell me if either, I guess. So if you like not only words, but the way I arrange and then say them, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to me, Brian from the channel Brian. Thank you and goodbye.